Hello and welcome to this webinar on the best practices for using MyEconLab to achieve measurable learning outcomes. My name is Michael Porteous. I'm the Product Manager for Learning Technologies in Higher Education at Pearson, Australia. I've left everyone on mute for the time being so I can get through these 10 important points quickly and clearly, but I appreciate that you're going to have some questions along the way. So to help with this, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but along the way you can ask questions into the webinar system as shown. I'll get through as many of the questions as I can at the end or follow up afterwards if I don't have an answer for you. So what does Pearson mean by best practice in regards to our MyLabs? What sources do we get information from and how do we formulate that best practice? So I think the word best practice can seem a bit nebulous, so what we define it as is the theory and the practice of implementing a MyLab into your teaching, but based on the successful usage of our MyLabs around the world. So Pearson has been on a journey of proving the efficacy of our products for a number of years now, which has given us a large library of evidence on the effectiveness of our products, and most importantly, how they are used to achieve these results. So these interactions with academics just like you who have made measurable progress in their teaching, along with educational research, has informed us of these best practices, not just what we as a company believe. So this webinar will focus on these overarching points, but we'll be looking at how this applies in particular with MyEconLab and economics courses. So the first point is identifying the problems you want to solve. So this might seem obvious, but without a goal, there is nothing to plan for. So goals define your implementation, give you something to measure which is vital, and this is the key sort of thing we need as the very first point. So best practice when using MyEconLab is about achieving goals, but also measuring success for refinement. The end point is as important as the journey. So what is your current goal? What are the difficulties you have in your teaching right now? Feel free to type these in. Maybe there'll be some interesting crossover at the end for Q&A. But in the meantime, here's some very common goals we see in Australia in higher education and economics subjects in particular. So we often see that we want faster student development, completing that developmental sequence more quickly. Creation of online or blended course options. Increasing student success rates, obviously. Better teaching with fewer resources, something we hear over and over. Reduction in cost per student expenses. Improved retention rates, we see consistently. We know that every student that you keep is going to be more money in the pocket of the university going forward. And reducing administration, better usability experience, and greater teaching efficiency overall. So these are all areas that MyEconLab, combined with other aspects of your teaching, can address. You just need to be certain of your goals to start with. So once you have your goals that need to be met, you can choose a method of delivery that is based on the needs of your students, your teaching staff, and by your capabilities, but also your restrictions. There can be many and varied and unique to your course. I don't believe there's a single cookie-cutter solution with so many variables that everybody has to deal with. But we can offer a few examples we have seen work well, especially in first-year business units. So here's some examples of ways that might work for you with some modification, just general overviews. So this is probably the most traditional way of putting a MyEconLab into your teaching. So the usual system of students preparing, face-to-face teaching of lectures, student follow-up, that's the ideal. Students come to the lectures, they do their work, they prepare for it. Obviously it doesn't always work 100%. But with this system, you can add in activities that support these stages with the usage of assessment, interactivity, and personalised learning in MyEconLab. So you can use assessments before face-to-face teaching to check understanding or give them some level of preparation which you can actually measure and assess. During lectures, some of our new MyEconLabs, such as the Hubbard franchise, will come with a bring-your-own-device classroom engagement system called Learning Catalytics. This can enhance the lecture or tutorial teaching space. And then after this, students can receive follow-up tests that link to a personalised study plan that guides students to the concepts they least understand. And this model is probably the easiest to introduce as it may replace some of the traditional assessments you already do, but it helps promote more prepared students, more engaged students, and better results due to personalised remediation. So another style of implementation we call disaggregated. So this is more about giving the power to your tutors and your teaching aides and make most use of tutorial style classes. So what you do is you create a master course that you control as the overseer of the entire course. You can then make copies for every subgroup, tutorial group, distance campuses, whatever works for you. And all of this mirrors the master course, and any changes you make to the master course will be reflected in all of these, so you retain control. So the goal of this model is to empower the face-to-face teacher with great analytics for the individual students and their subgroups. You can create competition between groups if you desire by showing which group is doing better. You can also easily assess the teaching staff and see how well they're doing with their individual students. So each teacher has full access to those small group of students' grades and analytics, so they can deliver more personalised face-to-face teaching combined with the features in MyEconLab to enhance this even further. So the flip model is something that shows a lot of potential for many courses, but perhaps not all of them. MyEconLab, however, is a really good technology to support this particular style. So in the flip model, the students are given content before face-to-face class time to help them prepare. So using assessment for learning, as well as your own unique content, you can deliver this to students instead of in your lectures to give them that information, test their basic knowledge, and make sure they're prepared on that base level for class. Then when you're in class, you can use MyEconLab experiments or possibly learning catalytics in lectures or tutorials to show them that application of knowledge. This is where you can really change how you teach in that face-to-face teaching rather than just delivering the content which has been done beforehand through MyEconLab. And then afterwards, you get them to complete study plans, fill in the gaps of their knowledge, and also push them forward, extend their understanding. Now, this is also in addition to any other intervention or extension strategies you have outside of the MyLab, and often might be led into tutorials and so on. So this is all designed to push students from the most basic part of Bloom's taxonomy, from just remembering and understanding it, into application, analysis, and evaluation and creation at the top level. So it's really pushing them to that critical thinking and taking the base level out of the lectures and putting it into a delivery system which is online, which you can measure as well. You can make sure the students are actually getting it. So I hope that's given you a few ideas that are currently working well, showing best practice can be used in a number of ways, but all of the points here will fit into any of those models or whatever you choose to use. So the third part is building an assessment plan. Now, this might sound similar to what we just said, but really this is about the nitty-gritty aspects of how you do it, not just the theory of how you'll achieve your goals. So here are some essential questions to ask at this stage. Who is responsible for what part of which process? Really important to understand that. What needs to be assessed? When and how? What settings and content are needed in MyEconLab to help drive this? And then what content needs to be created or modified? Because you can pretty much create or add your own stuff into MyEconLab as much as you like. And importantly, how does this tie into all of your other activities and learning goals for accreditation and so on? So making sure you've got that plan on the content-based level, and that's really easy to do with MyEconLab. So only you can answer a lot of those questions, but let's look at inside the system to see a few things that tie into it. So firstly, you can choose to create homeworks, quizzes, or experiments. So you can basically have the homework has all of the learning aids available, so students get all the help that they need. A quiz or a test has none of that. It's for assessing their knowledge and making sure that they know it. So there are two different ways, formative and summative assessment. So you can also assign experiment assignments, which are very interesting. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So you can decide what type of assessment you want to give them. You can then choose from a library of all of our content within the lab. So there are regular questions here, lots of different types of questions, some with learning aids, some not, some that have graphing tools and so on, some that have static questions, some that have algebraic questions, and you can break this down by chapter and learning objective and so forth. So you really have an easy way to get that content and find out what might be missing, what you need to adjust as well, because you can create your own questions and you just simply add them into your assignment. You can also create media assignments, so you can make sure that you can track if students have watched a video or done something else like that. This is an example of the experiments as well. If you want more information about this, ask your local education consultant, but it's a way you can bring some interactive game-like situations into your classroom as well. This one's about buying and selling of cranberries and the pricing mechanisms and so on. And just quickly, when you're in there, so I should go back, when you click on one of these blue links, you can immediately go and see what the question is. So you can very quickly find out what that content is. You can see the completed problem, so you can very quickly find out what you want to do, what you want to add in, and if you want to edit it too, if it doesn't quite fit what you need. So the flexibility here is really good. And lastly, the way that you deliver it is also covered. So you can set when it's available, when it's due, what happens with late submissions, do you give partial credit, do you want to assign prerequisites? There's many more options that go off the screen here. So you have a lot of control at how you deliver that. So that's all part of building that assessment plan and making sure it's rock solid. So the next point is get and keep everyone on the same page. So collaboration and communication is key to successful deployment of any new technology in a teaching plan. So you might be working solo, you might be part of a faculty redesign, you might have a team of tutors, or you might be in a teaching team. So everyone needs to be in the loop and understand the plans and goals so everybody is on board and nothing falls through. We recommend that initially everyone is brought in to understand those goals of implementation, but then continue with short, regular meetings through the semester to make sure that the key stakeholders are all involved. I also highly recommend including Pearson in your plannings and meetings. We have a learning technology team that can be on campus or attend by phone or WebEx to check in and offer advice and support with MyEconLab and teaching practices in a more personalised way for your particular subject. So these meetings give a chance for you to keep to the plan, make adjustments, look into data, make sure that you're going to achieve your goal and it's not going to fall through. Now, that all seems like a pretty big start. So we also recommend start small. Don't try to do everything all at once. The most successful implementations enable both student and faculty to ease into the new format. In this way, initial problems get worked out on a small scale before expanding to the entire course across all sections or throughout the department. So we asked our faculty advisors and people that have worked with us of what has worked for them. And what works really well are things like pilot implementations run in perhaps a summer course or a small section of your students first. Ease into that. If you've already done that, you can, you've obviously learned some lessons from those sorts of things. But having a pilot is a good way to get dip your toe in the water. Progressive implementation. So don't put everything in all at once. Only use selected aspects of MyEconLab to start, and when you're comfortable, add more features. And slowly integrate into your course. So start with required homework. When you're ready, add more diagnostics and so forth. So there's a lot that you can do, but each item that you add adds another level of complexity that you've got to track and understand. So we recommend only a few at a time. Start building it semester on semester, and you'll see better outcomes that way, and you'll be able to measure things more easily. I think this is really critical. When you talk about success, it's best to look at the student experience and design ways to make sure they are positioned for the most success in your unit using MyEconLab. So again, we asked our faculty advisors, people like yourselves all around the world, about some of the most effective methods they've seen to improve student outcomes from their own implementations or from other academics units. And some of the most common pathways for supporting students to get the most out of these are as follows. Make it easy to use. The first barrier is always usability. If students find it too hard to start with, they'll disengage, they'll complain, and it becomes a mess. So we really recommend that you integrate with your learning management system, our MyEconLab. So we can integrate with all of the major learning management systems so you have a single sign-on into the system. There's no fuss with dealing with technology. They click on your course, they click into our system, and it all becomes easy. Run an orientation session. So any new technology can seem really daunting until you understand it. So we recommend that during a lecture or a tutorial or some other way that you have sessions that just help the students acclimatise to MyEconLab and how it works in your subject. Set those expectations from the very beginning. Provide structure and rules. So students, especially in the first year, require a lot of guidance. They often see assessments as something they need to game and requires the rules of those games. But the good thing about this is you can control those rules so that the learning process is not trivialized because they're always going to game it. So making sure that you clearly outline the process for rules of assessment in the MyLab will make them feel more comfortable, it'll give you more control, and you'll have less students knocking at your door asking questions and extensions and so forth. This is critical. Require participation in the process. Time and time again, we see good resources not even touched by students because there's no incentive to get in and use those resources. Students don't understand the learning they can get from MyEconLab to begin with. And if there's no way to make them participate, you might only get 10 or 20% of your best students anyway accessing it and using it. So we recommend making sure that EconLab is attached to some level of grades as a hurdle obstacle, some way that they're incentivized to actually use it so they participate and they get the learning benefits. Once they start, they love it. Employ mastery in learning. So this is another clear indication we've seen of success. So with mastery learning, you make sure that every student has mastered a topic or a module before they pass or move on. So this can be done in many ways, but the self-paced and personalised aspect of the MyEconLab study plan can help you achieve this. It's really easy to pull reports on this, and you can set the mastery level to whatever percentage you like. The default is 80%, so you can make sure that every student has to achieve 80% or 70%. You can change that before you can allow them to pass or move on to the next section. This has been something that's worked really well around the world if you can integrate that part into your teaching. And make sure that they're moving on rather than just assuming they've moved on. And again, you can track all of this. The number 7 is connect and engage with your students. So students feel connected to the course and the content, are more engaged and have better results. The feeling of being disassociated from the process and system is especially bad in large first-year classes. There's also a level of shyness and embarrassment when trying to interact with young adults in particular in a class environment, and that creates another barrier there. So the more ways that you can help students feel connected and engaged with the process and content, the greater their interest and success will be. So there are a few ways that we can help with that. I'm going to mention Learning Catalytics again here. It's available with the Hubbard franchise or as it's on its own, and soon all of our economics products will be having this integrated into the MyLab. This is an excellent way to engage with students in a classroom setting that allows anonymous interaction, well, anonymous with their peers, you get to see everything they do. Engaging experiences, so students are engaged with the active learning process of answering questions, and peer learning, which this supports as well, where they actually discuss things with their peers before answering. It really makes them more connected and engaged with the whole process. You also can know your students' minds. So through the analytics capabilities, during a lecture or after a lecture, you can find out what they're not understanding, what they're thinking through various systems in Learning Catalytics. And that means you can react appropriately rather than taking a guess at what you think that they might not know or need help with. The more that you are spot on with what you need to address, the more connected they'll be to you. They believe that you really understand where they're at. So the MyEconLab Gradebook also allows a chance to engage with students who might be falling through the cracks. You can very quickly see which students are inactive through inactivity alerts. You can also go through and see which students are struggling by their grades. You can also find who are excelling and doing really well too. And the great thing about this is you can immediately send emails to these struggling students or send emails to students that are doing well to encourage them. So you can do that yourself or get a tutor to go into it, but they can easily see who they are and through the system send them an email immediately. So, we also have some of our faculty advisors that are giving us a few of these things. So, offer points for everything, as I mentioned before, is really important. Offer self-accreditation, acceleration options as well. The study plan does this very well, but allow those students who are doing well to do more, to get more study, to more help. Have students respond to each other, share ideas. We've got forums within the MyLabs you can use or on your LMS. It doesn't really matter as long as there's a way that they can interact. The peer learning and Learning Catalytics also allows this. And also get information to them as early as possible. Make sure that they're really engaged and they understand what's going on. That was something that came through loud and clear from our faculty advisors. So number 8, employ personalised and adaptive learning. So across all disciplines, for all academic skill levels, the most successful teaching and learning solutions include personalisation and adaptive learning technology that provide immediate feedback, enhance and inform the assessment. This is something that MyEconLab really excels at. So the study plan is a system of personalised learning that builds an individual pathway for each student they need to progress through until they've mastered that course, basically. This is initially populated by diagnostic tests and the results from your assignments if you choose. Along with this, all the questions in the study plan come with help. They get step-by-step help with some of these learning aids, where it will take them through and they'll get to do the question, and it resets that question afterwards with different values, algorithmically based numbers, which change each time. They also get individualized feedback. So if they're getting things wrong, they're getting help. It really is a learning process that's personalized. They get on the spot when they need it. That's a really important part of that whole personalization story of the study plan. The other part is adaptive learning. So in our first year Econ MyLabs by McTaggart and Hubbard, both are powered by an adaptive learning technology that changes the study plan from a linear progression to one that adapts to students' needs in a more dynamic way. So an adaptive study plan has an internal map, basically, of concepts which direct students to not just one direction, but will take them back to previous knowledge they struggle with to master, but also push them forward into new sections where appropriate. In this way, the system continually responds to student input and understanding, never resting until the student truly masters each concept. Another thing that we really like to mention here is conduct frequent assessments. Quite often you might have a mid-semester exam where you get some information back, but we've found that students who do weekly assessments especially, small weekly assessments that is, they'll be able to keep on top of the work better. Students really appreciate actually having that weekly kind of driven or even fortnightly driven assessments. It makes them keep up with the work rather than leaving it. It's a form of guidance, and it also helps you understand much earlier where the students are at through the data and analytics. All right, the last point is track learning gains. So what you don't track, you can't measure. And what you haven't measured, you can't prove has happened. So using data to track learning is essential in improving the success of using MyEconLab in your unit. The MyLab makes this very easy to do, luckily. So what you want to do is be looking for any data that supports the completion of your original goals that you set out and the strategy without drowning in numbers. So this will prove to yourself and your school and faculty that your students are learning more, that your teaching strategy is sound, and obviously hints on places that you can work to improve as well. So you can see here that MyEconLab gives you a whole bunch of different ways of looking at your data, from the raw numbers to visual ways of looking at data, through time on task, their time spent versus their scores. So you can really delve into this, into the details of individual students, individual classes, or even across multiple classes to compare. So the diagnostic abilities in MyEconLab can really support you finding out if the initial goals you set are actually working. So I hope that these sort of 10 high-level ideas of creating better outcomes, combined with some of the more detailed look into how our MyEconLab systems support them, has spurred some ideas. Now you might be thinking that this is a lot to consider, a lot of work to undertake. You might not even be sure how to get started. So to make sure that you have the best chance to achieve your goals, Pearson have dedicated teams ready to support this transition. So from our field-based consultants and our learning technology managers who can work with you on campus, or also have any questions about features I mentioned there, which I kind of glossed over, talk to your local consultant. We also have office-based customer experience team who deliver personalised training and pedagogical help and implementation. We also have IT specialists who work with your IT teams to achieve LMS integration, and even dedicated teams of local technical support for students and academics. We even have a 24-hour website you can go to get help and live chat at any time. So we really want to make sure that these services provide everything you need to make it run smoothly and get the most out of MyEconLab. So, you might have some questions. If you do, please type them into the questions field, or put up your hand so you can ask a question and I can unmute you. If nobody's got any questions, that's okay, but I'll just leave it open for a little while to see if there's anybody that wants to ask something. Okay, I don't think I've got any questions at the moment. So hopefully that all made sense to you. That was kind of a bit of a high-level view into it. But as I mentioned, we'll be able to give a lot more personal support with our consultants who will come to meet you, with our customer experience team and so forth. So thank you very much for attending. I hope you have a great day, and if you have any urgent queries, please send an email to marketing@pearson.com.au, and we're putting up this recording as well as following up with any other questions that might come through, so that everybody's kept on board and everybody's informed of anything else that might be able to be helpful. So thank you very much, and goodbye.